I'm Joshua T. Wagner, here to ask you if you would simply help in the rescuing of a movie theater. As you may know, movie theaters are struggling, and movie studios are having a tough time bringing people to go see their films. So for the low price of like $14.99 a ticket, plus the price of popcorn, drinks, candy, nachos where the cheese gets cold like halfway through the trailers, you could save a movie theater. So, I ask you, would you please save a movie theater today? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or depending on what time you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. So today I wanted to bring up two simple questions with very differentiating, complex answers depending on who you ask. The first question is, are movie theaters dying? The second question is, can movie theaters be saved? Again, pretty simple questions that I just don't think can have simple answers. So this morning when I woke up, I usually scroll through the phone, check different things, social media, whatever. And one of the things I usually go on is Variety. That's kind of like my go-to source for like movie news, film news, television, entertainment. And I saw this article while I was scrolling through that really caught my attention. And we'll get to the article in a bit, but essentially the main point of the article was radical ideas to bring new audiences to movie theaters. And I read through the article and I was like, okay, this is pretty interesting. And they essentially come up with like 4 main points. And again, we'll go into that. So I think I've mentioned this before in some previous videos. I myself worked at a movie theater a few years ago, still in the midst of the early stages of the pandemic. It was May 2021 when I started there. This was already like a smaller art house type movie theater in the back of like a dying mall, which sadly is now closed as of today. Not just the movie theater, but the mall itself. I was also in Florida a couple weeks ago, and because I used to live there, that's where I went to film school. I usually like to stop by some of my old stomping grounds and just see if things have been changing, whatnot. A few of the places I stopped by are some old movie theaters that I used to go to, 2 of which are second-run theaters, or more commonly known as dollar theaters. And the whole idea of a dollar theater now is pretty much dead. I don't think dollar theaters exist anymore. There might still be some out there for all I know. If there are, good for you. And the whole idea of a dollar theater is you can go see a movie that's kind of been out for a few months. You pay cheaper prices, not just for the ticket itself, but usually the concessions are a little bit cheaper as well. For the most part. You know, there's one that we used to go to in my early days of film school that I know it's been closed for a long time. Actually, I think it closed even during my time at film school, like over 10 years ago. I usually like to stop by just to see if there's anything being changed with it, and usually the answer is no. But there was another movie theater that in my later years of film school, I went to a couple times, and I actually briefly worked at for a couple weeks as well. That's a whole story of its own. And this one, to my knowledge, was still open. I was looking it up because I was like, you know what, maybe if I have time, I'll see what they're playing and I'll go see a movie. So I looked it up, and I sadly found out that they had actually closed in January of this year. And again, this was another second-run theater. This one was a little bit nicer, a little bit cleaner than the first one. When I was in Florida, I stopped by and I just wanted to see what it looked like. Again, the whole idea of like the dollar theaters, the second-run theaters, they pretty much are gone. But the Oscars were a few weeks ago, and the big winner was Anora and Sean Baker, who I'm a huge fan of. But Sean Baker, if you did watch the Oscars, or at least you saw his speech, one of his big speeches was about saving movie theaters and that studios and distributors and production companies need to focus on putting movies back in the theaters or focus on the theatrical experience itself. I thought it was fitting that, Quentin Tarantino was kind of like right over his shoulder as he's the one, giving the speech about saving movie theaters, because Quentin Tarantino himself is a big cinephile, obviously, and he even owns multiple movie theaters in the Los Angeles area that I've myself have been to and I love. And if I were to ever own a movie theater myself, it would be the way that Quentin Tarantino does it. He does it more of like a retro style. He'll show like older movies. He will do some new releases, but not a ton. Maybe if it's like a very niche movie or something of interest, then he'll do like a new release. But for the most part, he's showing like older movies. And his pricing model is very attainable for most people. I think when I go there, you can get a popcorn, a soda, maybe even something like a hot dog or candy and spend no more than $10 total, which to me, if you can go to the movies and spend no more than $10 at least on the concessions, that's pretty nice. Because I go to the movies now, just like a regular movie, and I'll spend $10 just on the popcorn itself. So speaking of me going to the movies, I still frequent the movies very often. I would say on average, I go to the movies about once a week, sometimes more. Actually, as the recording of this video, I will be going to see a movie tonight, Death of a Unicorn, the new A24 movie. And then most likely tomorrow or on Sunday, I'll be going to see the new horror movie, The Woman in the Yard. And there's even another movie coming out that I may even still try to go see, the new one with Jason Statham. I think it's called The Working Man, which that one we'll see. But my point is, I still go to the movies a lot. For me, it's one of my favorite things to do. Where I currently live, there's not a ton to do, especially in the colder time of the year. So going to the movies is a nice escape. You know, I am a single guy. I don't have kids. I don't have a wife. So yes, it's easy for me to go to the movies once a week. And of course, it helps when you have something like a movie subscription service. For me personally, I utilize the Regal Unlimited membership. Now, this is not an ad or a sponsor for them. I'm just simply saying that I do use that membership, and I do really, really like it. I've had Regal Unlimited now for maybe about 3-ish years. It also helps with stuff like snacks. You know, I need to get popcorn when I go to the movies. If I go to the movies and I don't eat popcorn, it's very rare for me. As I mentioned before, it's easy to drop $10 minimum on popcorn. But with the Regal Unlimited, you know, you get the bonus points, and they usually have a lot of like good deals going on. In fact, I think this weekend they have like 50% off of all popcorn. So that's something I'll probably take advantage of tonight. But usually I'll get like the bonus points, and then I can redeem those for like free popcorn, things like that. And there's been times where I've gone to the movies and I've spent $0 on the ticket, the popcorn, sometimes even the drink. Usually I might just get like a cup of water, so sure, call it cheating if you want, but hey, what can you do? And even before Regal Unlimited, I had AMC A-List for about 3 years. I think I started that in 2018. I did have Movie Pass before that for a little bit. And I also currently have the A24 membership, which is actually really cool because I'm a huge fan of A24. I really like their modern day way of distribution and marketing, but also what's really cool about the A24 app, and again, this isn't a sponsorship for A24 or anything, but what's really cool about their membership, anytime one of their movies comes into theaters, you get a free ticket. It's good for the opening weekend, so that Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, you have to go one of those 3 days. It gives you multiple theater options, so depending on where you live, it's not just you have to go to this theater. Usually it's whatever theater in your area is showing that movie, you can go see it for free. That's also just like another cool thing. Now, because I have Regal, I don't really use the A24 ticket too much. I am using it tonight because I'm going to go see the movie with my buddy. So cool. I got my ticket from Regal. I got his ticket from A24. I spent like 50 cents total for the processing fee on Regal. Maybe I'll get a popcorn, 50% off, $5. So I spent $6 total to go see a movie with me and a friend. Now, of course, there is the membership fees itself. Yes, I do pay $25 a month for Regal. I think for the A24, it's like $100 a year, $99 a year. That can be costly for maybe somebody who has a family with kids and things like that. I get that maybe that's not the biggest priority. But when you're already spending X amount of dollars a month on streaming, I mean, really, like, yeah. My whole point in this is if you play your cards right, you don't have to drop a whole ton of money when you go to the movies. Now, with that said, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit because I've even recently, or even dating back to like last year, I've considered not going to the movies as much. I've even considered canceling my Regal Unlimited for good. And what are the reasons for this? Well, there's a few reasons. The smaller ones, the first two smaller ones are, sometimes I just feel a little jaded as far as going to the movies. Like, you go to the movies so much, is the experience that much fun anymore? And of course, you know, every movie is different. Some movies are good, some movies are bad. I will say real quick, like some of the movies I've seen this year, like there's been some pretty good movies this year. And I'm not just talking like the big studio tentpole movies, but just some of the smaller ones. Like, just to give an example, some of the better movies I've seen so far this year. I saw Companion, which they released in IMAX. That was really good. That was a fun kind of horror movie. Another really, really good movie I saw this year was The Last Breath. Or Deep Breath? No. Deep Breath? No, hold on. I gotta get this right. It was called Last Breath. The movie starring Woody Harrelson. It was really good. I didn't have a ton of expectations. When I went in it, I honestly, I teared up. I really enjoyed the movie. And then just a couple other movies I'll throw out that I really enjoyed this year. Novocaine with Jack Quaid. The Monkey, the new horror movie by Oz Perkins. And Mickey 17. The new Robert Pattinson movie. So there's been some really good, like, not superhero Marvel type movies that have already come out this year. But with that said, what my whole point of this is sometimes I still feel jaded, and even the quality is not always the greatest. I'll go see like a new movie and I'm just like, all right, I'm just not that engaged. But sometimes I just can't tell. It's like, is it me? Am I jaded? Or is it the movie itself? But this year alone, there's been some pretty good quality movies that has made me really enjoy going to see them. Now the biggest reason why I've considered canceling my membership and maybe staying home and watching movies, which for me is not an easy thing to do. I don't like watching movies at home, especially newer movies. It's just not the same. If I want to go see something for the first time, I want to be fully immersed. But there's something that takes you out of that immersion when you go to the movies more than anything, and that's the people, the audience. There's always been problem with audience members, going back probably to even the beginning of cinema. But now more than ever, I would say the audience members are the worst. And what is it? Could it be because of cell phone technology? Yeah, that's probably it. Could it be because of attention spans? Yeah, that could also be it. Like, the amount of times I move seats in theaters is astonishing, actually. Like, I feel like anytime I go see a movie, I usually don't end up in that seat because somebody in that row, somebody in front of me, I can't, and I had to move. So yeah, I would have to say the audience is probably the biggest reason why I've considered not going to movies as much. Okay, so now let's get into the article finally. How to save movies, or more specific, let me give an actual shout out to the article itself. So this is on Variety. It was posted today as of Friday, March 27th. The headline of the article, Texting, Weed, and Sing-Alongs. 4 radical ideas for bringing new audiences to movie theaters. So I read through this. So they basically give 4 points, 4 different ideas on how to potentially bring in the audience. And I think they're more specifically talking about like younger people, like maybe college age, younger, things like that. Those that are more interested nowadays in like the social media and like the short form video content. So the first idea that they bring up, lighting up profits. What do they mean by that? Well, in the title, I mentioned weed, and this is what they're talking about. They basically bring up the idea of theaters allowing the accessibility of smoking marijuana in the theaters. Like, okay, well, as we know, in 2025, weed is pretty much legal in a lot of places. Now, this is not the first time I've heard about this. If anybody knows the filmmaker Harmony Korine, who did movies like Spring Breakers and more recently a movie called The Beach Bum with Matthew McConaughey from 2019, I think. I believe he did a screening at a film festival, or at least he had the idea. I can't remember if this actually happened or not, but he wanted to do a screening of his movie where the whole theater was full of weed and full of smoke and everything, because the whole idea of the movie is the Matthew McConaughey character is a stoner. So this isn't the first time I've heard about this idea. However, to make it more of a commercial thing, well, you know what? I would say out of the 4 points in this article, this might be the best idea, honestly, because what happened about 10 years ago? So 10 to 12 years ago, movie theaters started to invent new ways to get people to come to the movies. The biggest one's probably going to be the recliner seats, but also, if you noticed, the service of alcohol. A lot of the bigger AMCs have their own bar. I think it's called the MacGuffin. It's not to like Hitchcock, but it's really cool. Like the idea of like you can go have a drink before the movie, and I think you can even take the drink into theaters. And then my personal favorite chain movie theater, Alamo Drafthouse, they have servers that will come and serve you. And one of my favorite movie theaters in the world, it's in Orlando, Florida. It's called the Enzion. If you live in Orlando, if you ever go to Orlando and you want to do more than just Universal and Disney, it's basically like this renovated old house, and they do it kind of Alamo Drafthouse style, where they'll have servers come and serve you. They also have an outdoor bar / kind of restaurant, which is really cool because you can sit, have something to eat, have a drink before the movie. I think alcohol sales are a great way to bring in money for movie theaters. And even when I was working at a different movie theater after the one I worked at closed, we served alcohol there. And the amount of times I would have comments from adults that would go, wow, you guys serve alcohol? This is crazy. This is awesome. So the idea of smoking marijuana in a movie theater, honestly, doesn't surprise me. Now, that could get a little annoying because do you allow smoking cigarettes in movie theaters? Do you allow vaping in movie theaters? No. I mean, this is just in general. Like, when you go to a restaurant, they have the smoking section, they have the non-smoking section. So would movie theaters do the same thing? Would this be the smoking section? You sit here and you can do that, and then this is the non-smoking section. I think there's certain licenses that movie theaters would have to have depending on the state. Now, this could be something that maybe potentially happen, but down the road. I think the whole marijuana laws are still early in those fresh phases. And when it comes to like venues being able to do stuff like that legally, I think there's still a lot that has to be done about that. And who knows, maybe it'll bring back like the stoner comedies. Maybe Seth Rogen will make another movie. Like maybe Pineapple Express 2 will finally get into production. The second point, this is probably the one that I'm most against. The topic is feel free to text. Okay. Texting in movie theaters. I can't stand it. Is when I'm sitting in a theater and I see that phone light up, I lose it. I really do. Like, it takes me out of the movie. This is just the one idea that I cannot get on board. They make a point in the article where during slower parts of the movie, people can go on their phone and it would be okay. And people do that now. People do that even during the exciting parts of the movies. I don't get it. The most common thing I hear is, why would you pay money to go see a movie and be on your phone? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't understand that. But if movie theaters were to do this, I feel like it contradicts what they set up before a movie shows. When you go see a movie, what do they show usually right before the movie starts? It's usually a quick little ad that says, please, no texting during the movie. And sometimes they get clever with it. If you remember last year before Deadpool and Wolverine came out, they had a whole funny little PSA kind of thing where Wolverine was basically screaming at you at the screen, hey, bleepity bleep, turn your phone off. So I just feel like if theaters were to allow this, I just feel like they'd be kind of going back on their whole motto. They do bring up an interesting idea of having partitions in between like the seats, which is something that I've actually wanted before. If I'm sitting in that theater and there's somebody next to me on their phone, it'd be nice if you just had like a little thing that you can block them off. That would be great. I've literally had to take in like my hoodie or my jacket and put it on a certain way just to kind of block those people. So if there was a way to like have a partition in between, that'd be amazing. The problem with that is it costs money to do stuff like that. And for the Regal that I go to, which is not too far from me, they still have like the old school stadium seating. They would have to just renovate the theaters themselves just to have like the modern seats. There's certain Regals I go to that have the recliner seats. And what I love about those is that there's actually a wall in front of you and behind you. So you can't see the row in front of you and you can't actually see the people behind you, which I love that. So the only thing you're dealing with are the people next to you. Bring in that partition. You can block them out if you want. If you don't want it, you can just keep it up. Perfect. The third point in this article: more than movies. Now, again, this isn't something that's a brand new idea. This is something that's been done before. Even before the pandemic, I remember going to like AMC screenings and they actually would show NFL football games on Sundays, which I thought was kind of a cool thing, the idea of like being able to watch a football game on the big screen. And a couple of years ago, a big movie that came out that wasn't a movie, but it was a concert, was the Taylor Swift concert movie, you could call it. But that made a lot of money. And of course, the copycats followed after that, which didn't do as well. Taylor Swift was essentially the one that really was successful. But the idea of this whole article is theaters doing more than just showing movies. And this is something that I'm actually okay with. It's really about bringing butts into the seats. That's the most important thing for the theaters and the theater owners. They don't care why the people are coming to the movies, honestly. They just care that they're there and that they're spending money on popcorn and snacks and things like that. Now, of course, if you're a cinephile, you might be like, wow, that's the integrity of the movie theaters. Okay, all right, just relax a little bit. A certain venue isn't always designed for one specific thing. You might have a football stadium that mostly hosts football games, but when the football season's not going on, they're usually having concerts or other types of events. And movie theaters, I feel like, can benefit off of that same idea. Now, of course, movies are pretty much year-round, 365 days a year, but if you're a movie theater that has X amount of screens, maybe you have 8+ screens or you're a megaplex, what the heck? Why not dedicate 1 or 2 of those screens to like other types of entertainment? The idea is to bring the people to theaters and then get them to buy snacks. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. And the last point of the article is called increasing accessibility. This one is something, again, it's been done before. When I worked at the last movie theater I worked at, we would do like special screenings like once a month for people with like disabilities, and it would be stuff like where they keep the lights on, the sound would be lower. I think the idea is, though, like more accessible screenings, not just once a month. Everybody has the right to go and enjoy movies in a movie theater. Though that's the whole article right there. They have some interesting points. They have some points that I'm not really that on board with, but I like the idea of what they're going for. So now I'm going to wrap it up with my idea. This isn't like, okay, this is going to save movie theaters, but this is just an idea I've had for a bit that I thought maybe could help with bringing people into the movies. I'm going to bring up a stat real quick. Since the pandemic, since 2020, movie theaters box office hasn't done as well. And I had this thought of like, when big movies come out, big tentpole movies, it's pretty common for them to make at least $100 million domestically opening weekend. I can only think of like maybe 1 or 2 movies that made at least $100 million opening weekend since 2020, one of them being Spider-Man. But then I was like, let me actually look at it. And the numbers were actually kind of interesting. So real quick, in 2019, there were 6 movies that came out that made at least $100 million domestically opening weekend. 6 total. Okay. In 2021, there was only 1. Of course, it was Spider-Man. 2020, there was none, obviously. In 2022, there were 8 movies that came out that grossed at least $100 million opening weekend. So there's actually more movies in 2022 that made over $100 million than in 2019, which to me, I always think of as the last great year for cinema and think of all the big movies that came out that year. But to think that there was actually more movies that came out in 2022 that made more opening weekend than in 2019 is actually interesting. And I guess it makes sense too, because people were really getting back into like going out and enjoying themselves. And I feel like all the restrictions were lifted at that point. Now here's the last of it. 2023 and 2024, there were 5 movies each year that grossed at least 100 million. So the number went down from 2022 to the next 2 years. The number went down. And then in 2025, so far this year, in about 3 months, there's been 0 movies that have made at least $100 million opening weekend. Now, with that said, the overall gross by year for movies is drastically down since 2017. So in 2017, 2018, and 2019, the total box office domestically was about $11 billion. In 2020, it was $2 billion. Again, makes sense. 2021, it was $4 billion. Again, makes sense. But then in 2022, which is the year that I just said, there were more movies that came out that grossed at least $100 million opening weekend, more than in 2019. The total box office was $7.3 billion. So it was about $4 billion less than it was in 2019, which had less movies come out that made over $100 million opening weekend. So what could have been the reason for that? I would say it's the legs of the movie. A movie comes out, you go see it opening weekend, maybe you never see it again in the theaters, or you skip it opening weekend and people go see it the second weekend, or word of mouth. You know, I remember obviously Endgame came out and I think I saw that 3 times. I remember Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I saw that like 4 times. Knives Out, I think I also saw like 4 times in theaters. There were a lot of movies in 2019 that I went and rewatched multiple times later weekends. And it seems like that just doesn't happen anymore. A very popular thing that's going on in the film business is the shortening of the theatrical window. We recently had that movie Mickey 17 come out with Robert Pattinson, a movie that I said was really good. I enjoyed it. I saw it opening day, and I think the 17 days after that movie came out, it's already on streaming. And that's kind of what has killed the dollar theater. You know, you don't go see a movie 3 months after it's come out in theaters anymore because it's already streaming. And I think that's maybe a reason why those overall numbers in 2022 and 2023, 2024 are way lower than it was in 2017, 2018. It's because people aren't going to the movies as much after it's come out, like after opening weekend. And another big thing that I've noticed too is this phrase, oh, I'll catch it when it's on streaming. And I think that's just like that mindset that really is hurting movie theaters, is the idea of waiting for it to be available kind of for free or on a paid membership on streaming. So here's my idea ultimately, as I've been rambling on for this however long now. My idea is the idea of bringing the dollar theater motto back. New movie comes out and a lot of people go see it opening weekend. Now, that same movie might be in theaters for how many X amount of days. So if you go see, let's just use Captain America, The New World, just for example. You go see that movie opening night, and let's just say it cost you $15. Now you want to go see that movie again 2 weeks later. You maybe want to go bring your buddy or your family. So you go see it again 2 weeks later, and it still costs you $15. So what I think could help bring people to go see movies after it's already been out is decreasing the price of the ticket for that movie each weekend it's out. So it might be $15 for that opening weekend or for the first week. And then by the time the second weekend comes around and that movie's still in theaters, you decrease that price by a certain percentage. When Captain America is out for its second weekend, now it's maybe $9 or $10 instead of $15. And that idea could be more engaging for people who might be on, a financial strain, who maybe don't have the membership thing. I can go see this movie its second weekend or its third weekend for like half the price. This is something that kind of they do already with Discount Tuesdays, where it's like $5 tickets and things like that. I don't see why the movie theaters would not be on board for this, because the whole idea is you're trying to bring in more people. And again, they just want more people so they can buy more snacks and concessions. That's how they make their money. So the real thing that could hold that back would be the studios. Not every studio participates in that Discount Tuesday program. So would every studio want to participate in the discount weekends? I don't know. A lot of movies make their money, at least a third to maybe even a half of their money opening weekend. Very famously, horror movies make most of their money opening weekend. Then usually by that second weekend, they fall like 50%. And of course, like I mentioned Captain America as an example, that was a movie that had a pretty decent opening weekend, and then it fell a huge amount that second weekend. But would it have fallen that much if the ticket prices were a little bit lower and more people were interested in going to see it, if they could spend a little less money? Maybe. I want to thank everybody for watching. I hope you found this informative and interesting and hopefully entertaining. Until next time. All right.
See you, chump.